In this video, we'll talk about what are the different type of objects available in Python. The first object type that we are going to discuss would be those kind of objects which just have one element inside it. So we have used the comments on top of each codes that are shared and enclosed with each of the video. So this section comprises of single element objects. Now within single element object, you have different kind of object types. One can be integer data type, another can be a floating point number which is in decimals, then another one can be a string object. We'll talk about the integer type object. So let's say that we create an object x with a value 1 and y with a value 2. So there are two objects that are being created, x and y, and these are single element type objects, and both of them are integer because the values that are created inside these two objects, these are integers. Now if you go ahead and run it, so the line number 1 gets generated. We have written x and y both here, but the output that we get in Jupyter is for the most recent one. So the output that we get is for the y object. The y object has a value of 2. So we get the value of y object in the output. We do not get the value of x object in the output. Now let's discuss about a print command. What print command would do is it would print the output for the object that you define. However, in the line number 1, what we have seen is you get the output for the most recent object that you have mentioned. So the most recent object that we have mentioned here is y. So that is the reason why we are getting the output for the most recent output. However, in this particular line, you can see that we have written print x and print y. Now, what is the significance of print x and print y? You can see the output of the line number 2. You get the output of print x in the output window as 1. And at the same time, you get the output for the y variable as well. So the y object shows you the output of 2. So when you write the print command, it is going to explicitly show you the output of each of the variable, irrespective of the fact if it is mentioned in the last place or if it is mentioned in the first place in the code. Let's take a look at line number 3. You can also create an object which is copy of another object. So we have created an object by the name of z, and this z is copy of x, and x has a value of 1. So z would also have the value of 1. So if you go ahead and run this command, which is line number 3, we get the output as 1 in the output window. Now if you want to check that what kind of object it is, so there's a type command. So type is a function in Python. Any command that you write which opens with a bracket and closes with a bracket is called a function. So type is a function which is used to check what is the type of a particular object. Since z is a copy of x and x was an integer, so z would also be an integer object. So once we run this command type z, we get an output as int. Int stands for integer. With this, we conclude the very first type of the single element object in Python, which is integer object. Now we'll move on to a real number, which is again a single data type element. Now in this case, we are creating an object x, which is equal to 10 by 3. So it would give us a value of 3.33. This would not be an integer because it would have some decimal values. And this would be a real number. So in case we run print type of x and we write print x and we write the type of, this is not required. If we run this, what we get is the real numbers are the floating point numbers. So real numbers are represented by the floating point numbers in Python. Where you see the object type is float, it means that it has real numbers. And since we have written print x, the output that we got is 3.33. Now we have discussed about the real number and integer. Now let's talk about the character string. You can create a single element type object which can have characters inside it. So whenever you are creating an object with characters inside it, you need to put that in quotes. For example, if I want to create an character object which is by the name of string_1 and it has some characters inside that, if I don't put quotes in the beginning and the end, I would get an error, which is invalid syntax. So whenever you have character values, put that in either single quotes. So in this case, I have placed single quotes, and this is the output that we get. The element value is first string. This is the output that we get. You can also create a character object with double quotes, single quotes and double quotes. It doesn't matter. But if you run this line number 8, the output that you would get is the second string, which we have created through double quotes. So it doesn't matter if you have created with a single quote or a double quote. You can also write 3 quotes in the beginning and 3 quotes in the end. So for example, here we have created an object by the name of string_3, and it has third string as an element value. And we have placed 3 quotes in the beginning and 3 quotes in the end. So even it is giving us an object type which is of character. In case you want to confirm what kind of object it is, you can write the type syntax and it would give you string. So characters object are being represented by string str in Python. Now we'll talk about the applicability of 3 quotes specifically. So single quotes and double quotes, you can use it interchangeably. When you will use the 3 quotes, it will depend upon the situation. In case you have some double quotes or some apostrophes in your text statement. For example, you have a long text statement and you have some double quotes and you have some apostrophes in between. It is a good practice to use 3 quotes in the beginning and 3 quotes in the end, so that the program is able to interpret that where your text string is starting and where it is ending. Because if you would use double quotes instead of 3 quotes, the Python would understand that this particular statement is starting here and it is ending at this point of time. Now this particular statement is like that. Steve said, I will join John's team. So it is an active voice, and then you have post that the conversation ended, and you have an apostrophe in between. So when you know that there are double quotes or single quotes in between as a part of text string, go ahead and use 3 quotes in the beginning and 3 quotes in the end. If you run this command, it runs successfully. Now we will discuss another kind of single data type element, which is a boolean. A boolean would have either true or false values. So let's take a look at this comment. Here we have created an object which has a single element, and this is a boolean object, and we are creating it by the name of boolean_value1, and we are writing true. So in this case you don't need to put quotes because this object is a boolean data type. It would either have the value either true or false, and you need to be mindful about the fact of cases, about the upper cases and lower cases in Python. So true would have T in the capital, rest of them would be in small. So if you write true, all of it as capital, the system would give you an error. It would give you the name error that the true name true is not defined. In case you use true with T as capital, you can see it turns green, which means system is able to recognize this particular command. And this object is created, which would have the value true. And if you look at the type of this particular object, the type of this particular object would be boolean. So this is a boolean kind of object that we have, which is a 4th kind of object that we have discussed within the single element type objects. Now you can create the boolean value with either true or false. In this case, we have created the boolean value with a false as element value.